The British people want to fly in solidarity. It is truly, truly shameful.
No.
And of course, Madam Deputy Speaker, NATO's Secretary-General is right to warn today that our alliance has an unhealthy reliance on one ally. We need to invest more heavily in our defence and more rapidly. I know my right honourable friend, the Defence Secretary, and his team do not need persuading on this, nor do they need lectures from the Conservative Party, who ran down our capability and now have the audacity to heckle from the sidelines like the arsonist complaining that the fire brigade hasn't turned up fast enough. I'm with the Secretary of State and his team all the way. But we also, he says, the Shadow Secretary of State says bankrupting the country. I think he's thinking about Liz Truss and the joyride that no doubt he was cheering on. I think a period of silence or at least an apology might be welcome from the Conservative front bench. But we also need to recognise that a nation draws its strength from the condition of its people. A recent survey of 16 to 29-year-olds suggested that around half of all young people in this country wouldn't be prepared to fight for it. I'm not so sure about that. I think they would be every bit as brave and self-sacrificing as their grandparents and great-grandparents were, or as their contemporaries holding back the Russians in Ukraine have been. When the cause is just and the need is urgent, they will step up, regardless of what they might have told opinion pollsters. I know this because when this country was facing a dire threat from COVID, young people did step up. The generation least at risk gave up the most to help the rest of us keep safe. And how did Britain repay them? Shortchanging them on their education, layering on debt, making it harder to get on the housing ladder, failing to protect them from the AI jobs apocalypse. This generation is the first left totally exposed to the time-sucking algorithms and perils of social media. The Education Secretary and I have raised our concerns about the impact of this on their learning and their well-being, but I also wonder what it is doing to their sense of connection with community and country. But patriotism isn't a lecture the old deliver to the young. It's a relationship. And for generations, Britain understood that relationship as a social contract. You work hard, you play by the rules, you contribute to society, and in return, you can build a decent life, a secure job, home of your own, a family if you want one, and the hope and conviction that your children will do better than you did. A generation ago, the average home cost around 4 times average earnings. In many parts of Britain today, it is 8, 10, even 12 times earnings. Private rents consume vast proportions of household income. Millions of young people who work hard and do the right thing cannot see a path to home ownership or security. Today, nearly 1 million young people are not in education, employment or training. Many are trapped in insecure work, unable to move out, delaying starting their families, postponing adulthood itself. And layered on top of this economic insecurity is a new technological anxiety. For generations, people believed there was a ladder of advancement, an entry-level job, skills acquired over time, promotion, security, progress. Now many young people fear that artificial intelligence may remove the lower rungs of that ladder altogether. They ask, what skills will still matter? Will there still be routes into stable, middle-class lives for kids from working-class families like mine? Will deindustrialisation be replaced with reindustrialisation and the jobs of the future? Will opportunities extend to our towns, rural and coastal communities, or will inequality become entrenched? These are not irrational fears. They are rooted in real economic change. And unless mainstream democratic politics can answer these questions, others will exploit that vacuum. They already are. Defence is about hard power and capabilities, but it is underpinned by the soft power that binds a country together: pride, belonging, shared activities and institutions, hope. We need to rebuild them for modern times. This is the calling of the Labour Party, brought into existence to champion the interests of the working man and woman, the many, not just the privileged few. It gave this kid from a council estate in Stepney in East London the chance to realise my potential, to go to a great university and spend my career tackling the injustices that hold other kids from backgrounds like mine back. The greatest tragedy of Britain today is that the next generation, for the first time in our modern history, face worse prospects than the last. So the question isn't whether young people would fight for their country, but when their country is going to fight for them. Yeah. This is our generational challenge. To not only deal with the immediate issues of affordability, small boats and NHS waiting lists, but also to face up to a turbulent world being remade by climate change and the biggest and fastest industrial revolution in the history of the world. To make sure that no one is left behind and no one is held back. That's our job now, as the old economy of the 20th century finally gives way to the AI revolution of the 21st. And to tackle the crisis facing the next generation as an emergency with the urgency that the moment requires. Never waste a minute. That's been my mantra in government, and it's why I don't believe our party has time to waste in government treading water. Because the thing about emergencies is that they make the impossible possible. Look back at the crises we've confronted. We couldn't vaccinate against the deadly virus until we could. We couldn't nationalise the banking system until we could. We couldn't reorient our entire manufacturing base towards building aircraft until we could. We couldn't build hundreds of thousands of homes fit for heroes until we could. In times of greatest peril, our country has been capable of doing big things. We still can. Britain used to punch above its weight in the world. We still can. Each generation used to provide a better future for the next. We still can. Another member of the Cancer Club, the late great bow babe, Dame Deborah James, famously said, "Take risks, love deeply, have no regrets, and always, always have rebellious hope." It is with that in mind, and with the belief that we can and must do better, with deep love for my party and my country, with no regrets, and with rebellious hope, that I have left the government. The Labour Party was elected to deliver real change. We still can.
Dr. Andrew Morrison, after which we'll go to a speaking limit of 7 minutes. Dr. Andrew Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I genuinely congratulate the Right Honourable Gentleman for a remarkable speech and wish him well in his future ambitions. But his speech and its content were, I'm afraid, not as germane as the contribution of the Honourable Gentleman who chairs the Defence Select Committee. I agree with everything he had to say. I only regret I couldn't put it as elegantly as he did. The Right Honourable Gentleman, Member for Ilford North's resignation letter on Thursday is worth reading, and I'm very sure that members of the Treasury benches will have read it closely. He talked of where we need a vision, we have a vacuum. Where we need direction, we have drift. And that should worry the government, and I agree with him. And I'm particularly mindful of the Defence Investment Plan, which we haven't seen. And I'm very conscious the Defence Readiness Bill, which we were expecting in this King's Speech, has yet to materialise. That's of deep and profound concern. In the 1930s, where arguably we faced a similar situation to that which we're up against now, the government of the day decided about 5 years in advance of the outbreak of the Second World War that it must gear up our defence industrial base to tackle the future. And it created things like shadow factories, initially with the opposition of industry and centred very largely, at least initially, around the automotive industry and the production of aircraft, but extending much further than that. And it was truly a cooperative venture that led eventually to this country being able to turn out in those early years more aircraft than Germany was able to do. And I would have thought that this government would have learnt those lessons and would now be bringing forward, as a matter of urgency, its own defence readiness bill. It has missed an opportunity, and I'm very sorry about that, because there is no question of a doubt that industry is being held back, as has already been mentioned this afternoon, in its ambition to partner with the Ministry of Defence, with ministers, and get things going in terms of reprovisioning what we have sent to Ukraine, quite rightly, and fitting our armed forces for the future. Now, some have already mentioned hollowing out. I think it's worthwhile saying that in 1989, every country in the Western world was taking a peace dividend. It would have been extraordinary had they not, and they would have been punished by the voters. But that was then. The big lesson I learned from what has happened in the years since 1989 is actually you can afford to titrate what you provide in order to defend this country, which is never popular electorally, with the threat that is facing you, but you must do nothing to reduce your armed forces below an irreducible minimum so that you can regrow preceding 1914 and 1939, and you must do nothing that will damage long-term projects, because procurement isn't something you can turn on and off like a tap. Procurement takes decades. I think we've learnt that mistake. And one of the mistakes I think the previous government made was delaying the dreadnought class. And the reason for that, as I referred to in the intervention that the honourable gentleman very generously allowed me to make, was the coalition government and pressure from our then coalition partner. Now, right now, we're facing our principal ally, the United States, backing off in terms of its support for ourselves and our European allies. We can no longer entirely rely on that which we had previously heavily relied upon. We will be the only provider of a nuclear deterrent if it's, as it seems likely, the US proceeds on this particular course of action. That is to say, a nuclear deterrent declared to NATO. It is therefore important that in the Defence Readiness Bill, when we see it, we have a reaffirmed commitment to reprovisioning CASD at pace. Now, much work has been done in terms of infrastructure and at AWE, but we are still facing a rundown Vanguard class that is obliged to go on patrol for upwards of 200 days, with consequent impact on the men and now women who man up the submarine service. And of all the pinch point trades in our armed forces, it is those that exist within the submarine service that should keep us all awake at night. It is imperative that we accelerate that programme. And I would also ask ministers to look at the F-35 Alpha provision and agree with me that providing 12 airframes is hardly sufficient.